You know, sometimes stuff happens. Things just go wrong. And as a former, yet always technical writer, I know there's one place that prepares you for the worst. One place that readies you for when things go wrong. There's one place that everybody knows your name. No, sorry, that's something different. There's a place that you can go for answers, and you don't even need to face down the keymaster to do it. So, let's go there. Just a little side note before we begin. Over Christmas, my wife and I finally decided we had had enough of waiting to get a cat. So we got two. They're 3 and 5 months old, and since I film in my home, there's a non-zero chance one or both of them will be joining us. Either on video or, if they decide to continue their reign of terror on our bedroom, kitchen, bathroom, lounge, office. Anyway, you might hear them in the background of the show. I will do my best to remove any catastrophes, but you do what you can do. Anyhow, on with the show. Back when I started driving, you know, when we'd just switched over from horse-drawn carriages and the nice chap with the flag walked along in front of you to alert people, you had to have specific instructions on how every vehicle worked. The foot pedals, if there were foot pedals, might be in a different order to the one that we know today. They also did different things like pick the gear your car was in, or perhaps a switch between dipped and high beam headlights. The way you controlled the ignition timing varied from car to car. Each different vehicle was an entirely different beast. And then we entered a long period where the basics were pretty much worked out, where the pedals were in a specific order, the way you turned on the car was pretty much a given, the lights on the dash were more or less standardized, and the way that you opened and closed the doors and indeed locked them was widely understood. And because working on one's own vehicle was much more common than it is today, you might even have enjoyed a little more under the hood knowledge than today's average driver. But we're in a period of flux with a shiny new technology, and whether it's electric or not, modern vehicles are far more variable in the way that they work and also in what you should know when they break. At one point in history, if you owned a particular vehicle and you were a social sort, you might have joined a local owners group where you'd get the chance to diagnose and discussed ownership problems over a pint at the local pub. These days, it's more likely that you'll head online to an owners forum or to Facebook, where you can ask others what the issue you're having might be caused by. But how shall I put this delicately? Not all owners forums and social groups are created equal, and if it's a basic question, you might as easily be met with derision and scorn as you are with a helpful answer. And while it's probably very tempting to jump online and ask your favourite power-sucking artificial unintelligence to help you diagnose the problem, there's a risk that AI will give you an answer it made up, or indeed misinterpreted. There are so many options for stupid things LLMs have said because they are fundamentally fancy autocomplete, from advising unknowing users to enter a command that deletes every file on their computer, to suggesting that you make spaghetti sauce with gasoline, to eating rocks. Don't trust output from AI without checking it somewhere else, basically. So today we're going to chat about why you should know some things, and some of the things that you should know about your car, and why you should read the owner's manual that someone spent hours writing.
Kate, be good! It's only January!
Yes, I will. Yes. I'm sorry. I promise to be good. I promise to be good. It's New Year. I should probably start with a little note that in most markets around the world, new cars must come with user manuals. There was a recall recently in the US because Cadillac didn't have its owner's manual readily accessible on the infotainment system. It was a digital one, but your car should have either a physical manual or a digital one embedded into its infotainment system. If it doesn't, and it's new, check with your dealer. If it's used, and a lot of used cars don't have their manuals anymore, you should be able to download it for free from the automaker's website in a handy-dandy PDF form. Okay, much though it pains me, you maybe don't have to read the manual cover to cover. But there are some things you should know, so let's run through them. Back when I lived in the UK, I had a pre-production, mostly Japanese spec Mitsubishi i-MiEV. It's one of my favourite cars that I've ever owned. One of its pre-production quirks was that it didn't tell you when the key fob battery was running out. Well, technically it did. It told you by flashing the hazard lights while you were driving, but not the interior hazard light warning telltale. So if you had someone that you knew following you, they'd be utterly bemused, somewhat flummoxed by your random flashing hazard lights, and they might mention it, and then you would know. No, I really have no concept of what coding decisions led to that. So that did tend to mean that the fob would eventually die, and then you had to use a manual key to get you in the car. Fortunately, most modern vehicles give you some kind of warning that the key fob battery is dying, if they have a key fob, and that allows you time to replace it ahead of its actual demise. But if for some reason you fail to do so, most fobs have a physical key hidden inside, which allows you to gain entrance to your vehicle the old-fashioned way. And once you've done that, most vehicles also allow you to hold up the fob to the steering column, or somewhere similar, and with that in position, you can start the car, even if the key fob battery is completely flat. The specifics of that process from car to car, yeah, it's going to vary and it's going to be in the manual. Although many manufacturers also have YouTube or similar channels where they show videos of these tricks, so that's also worth checking out too. But knowing that before you're stuck outside your car, really handy. The opposite side of that is if you're in the car and something goes horribly wrong, how do you get out? If your car is as old as mine, the door handle is probably mechanically linked to the door mechanism. Assuming that the door is still physically functional, you can usually yank the handle and give it a shove, even after a nasty accident. But if not, it's likely that one of the other mechanically operable doors will be openable. And if that's not working, then you use your brake glass hammer. You do have a brake glass hammer, and you know how to use it, right? But in many modern EVs and some more luxury gas cars, the regular door opener is an electronic system. One which uses servos and electromagnets and all sorts of other systems to open the door. And that's all very well and very fancy, but in the event of a collision, those systems can stop working. And sometimes they can stop working for the entire vehicle. And in that event, you'll likely want to not be staying in the car, so it's advisable to know how to open the door in the event of the electronic door lock mechanism not working. These vehicles all have a manual door release mechanism hidden somewhere. It's not always super obvious though, and knowing how that mechanism works could be the difference between surviving a crash and not. So, check how it works ahead of time. And that's probably one of the most important things to know about your vehicle. Assuming you like breathing. I'm an ER nurse. Not as much as I used to be, but I am still an ER nurse, and I am a big fan of breathing. It's one of my favourite activities, and I imagine you're quite fond of it too, so, knowing how to get out of your vehicle in an emergency when the vehicle's been disabled, well, not only does it potentially save me a lot of work, It also allows you to keep doing something you enjoy. It's a win all round. So that's probably, like I said, the most important thing you can find in the manual. But there's another related one that's going to come up in a bit. There's also just stuff that's handy to know and that can keep you out of trouble or stop you being stuck at the side of the road. A lot of these involve being able to open the hood or the trunk. Most EVs are still dependent on 12-volt accessory batteries. These batteries can be a source of great pain because they often fail in ways that are not always immediately obvious in the way that they are in a gas car, and that can lead to obscure problems. Those of you who've watched the channel a long time will know that I've tossed the original 12-volt battery from my Kia Niro EV and replaced it with a slightly higher capacity one because I had persistent issues with weird faults from the battery getting too low in the winter and the auxiliary battery maintenance system not managing to top it back up in time. Similarly, our RAV4 EV, BMW i3 Rex and Nicky's Leafs, Bolts and F-150 Lightning have all misbehaved when their 12-volt accessory battery was dying. Now, unlike cars of the 80s, 90s, even early thousands, it's important to remember that changing a 12-volt battery in an EV may actually be a process that requires computer systems being reset to be aware of the new battery. So if your 12-volt battery is suspect, check what the process is to change it in the manual before just yanking it out and replacing it. Last year, Nikki learned the hard way that the Lightning has such a system, and because she hadn't reset it, she landed herself with a very expensive repair bill. Now, most EVs, you still pop the hood the same way. You pull a lever under the dashboard to get to the battery to change it. But if your car has one of those fancy door poppers and the 12-volt system has decided to take an unscheduled break, what are you going to do? You can't open the door to open the hood. Or indeed, use the app to open the hood if that's a thing you can normally do. Cars that have systems like these have a number of different ways to provide that required low voltage power to power up those basic systems. For example, the Mustang Mach-E has a small cover plate in the front bumper which you remove to access a connector where you can connect a jump pack or another 12-volt battery. That will allow you to power up the car so that you can open the hood. The same's true of many Teslas. Rivian's R1S and R1T hide that power connector by the tow hitch. Knowing how to get to it when your battery is dead can save you waiting hours for a tow truck to come, if you can find someone to give you that jump start. And while you might think that physical door locks with keys are a thing of the past, I mean, when did you last see one on a new car? Some vehicles still have them hidden. Kia and Hyundai hide their door locks just behind the driver's door handle, and other car companies just hide the keyhole behind a trim piece that may not be easy to pop off from pure intuition. So the manual's your friend. Now we come to a favourite of mine, and this has happened a lot less as technology's matured, but in the early days of this cycle of trying to end our addiction to fossil fuels, it used to be something I heard about more, and I think it still does crop up from time to time. So that is that sometimes things go wrong at a charging station, either with the station or with the car, and while most of the time the outcome of that is pretty uninteresting and just a little frustrating, the car just doesn't charge, sometimes things can get a little more fraught. That happens when, for whatever reason, the charger or the car does not unlatch and allow the cable to release. Most vehicles have an emergency release that you can pull, usually a cord or a wire with a red or yellow loop on the end of it. And for those of us who have vehicles with powered charge door covers, sometimes there's a manual mechanism to open those too. As we talked about back before we repaired the Soul, we had to use the door release because the solenoid failed. And when we had the i3, it had a bit of a problem pretty shortly after we bought it, and we had to use the emergency gasoline filler door release because, you know, it needed filling up and it was refusing to let us. That was a fun early ownership experience. Anyhow, Knowing where those emergency releases are is super handy and can save you a ton of trouble. My other pro tip is to call the charging station provider. I've had to do that once, a long time ago, when a Greenlots charger in Seattle locked on, again to our BMW i3, and Limpet-like would not let go, but would also not initiate charging. Calling the support line and a reboot of the charger and car later, and we were freed. Okay, and the final thing that I think it's important to know about, well, that I'm gonna talk about, is knowing where the high voltage battery disconnect is. If you have the misfortune to have been involved in an accident where emergency personnel need to know how to disconnect the high voltage system, knowing where the high voltage disconnect is can save you and them time and stress. I've read reports of tow truck drivers not wanting to move a significantly damaged EV without the high voltage system being disconnected. Each model is different and there's no way every responder is going to be familiar with every single vehicle, so it's handy if you know where it is. To be clear, I'm not suggesting that you disconnect the high voltage system yourself, although there may be incidents where that is appropriate. I'd certainly be tempted after a collision significant enough to deploy airbags, or if there was any indication of any significant impact to the battery casing. I'd also be tempted if there was smoke, but only if it was safe to remain by the vehicle long enough to do so. Mostly I'd suggest just getting away from it, just in case. Anyhow, your manual will almost certainly tell you where it is, whether it's a pull this connector or cut this wire type of affair. And as I say, knowing that may save you time and torment during one of the most stressful events that any car owner can experience. Now, I said that was it, but there is, I think, actually one more thing. Gone are the days when your car comes with two unlabeled orange lights and it's on you to discern their purpose, or read the manual to find out. One of them is for oil pressure. The other would be for a blocked oil filter, but they didn't actually install the sensor for very long, so it's just ornamental. Except that some dealers decided to reuse that light and make it a high temperature sensor light. Basically, if it comes on, you should probably stop. Looking at the manual will tell you what the warning lights mean. Thankfully, the pictograms for EVs are usually fairly explanatory and much less opaque than the something is wrong somewhere in the engine and you should either stop driving or maybe you can continue driving light that existed on the Mark III Vauxhall Cavalier I briefly had stewardship of. Most modern vehicles will give you more information on digital displays in the driver's cluster, but there are warning lights that can have multiple meanings and it's useful to know what they are. And it's always nice to know why your car is yelling at you.
Your electrical system is malfunctioning. Prompt service is required.
And whether it's safe to continue driving. So those are my recommendations for a happier life. Thanks for watching to the end. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments or on the socials what knowledge has saved you automotive pain. Telling me that will let me know that you've made it to the end too. We are 100% independent, and if you'd like us to stay that way, there's a link in the down below to support us on Patreon from $1.50 a month, so you can join the long list of amazing channel supporters right here. You can also send us money on Ko-fi, buy some swag from our swag store like this phenomenal t-shirt, and please hit subscribe. YouTube won't reliably tell you when we've pushed a new video though, so make sure you also follow us on social media or join our Discord chat room or join our Patreon. Thanks for watching, thanks for helping be the positive change in the world, and until next time, keep evolving!